What's more dangerous than being cheated on? Not knowing something is wrong while you're still investing everything. You start noticing small things. She hides her screen. She avoids certain places. Her stories don't quite match anymore. But instead of trusting that instinct, you tell yourself it's nothing. You give her the benefit of the doubt, again and again. And slowly, you become the only honest person left in a situation that no longer feels honest. Today, I'm breaking down 7 unmistakable signs something is seriously off. Not to make you paranoid, but to make you aware. Because once you understand these patterns, you stop guessing, and you start seeing the truth for what it really is. The first sign is this. She doesn't communicate the way she used to. And more importantly, she doesn't communicate around you anymore. Pay attention to that difference. It's not that she stopped talking to people. It's that she stopped letting you see it. She takes calls, but suddenly she needs to step outside, or she lowers her voice and turns her back. You're sitting right there, but somehow you're no longer part of the moment. You see her texting, and instinctively she angles the screen away. Not dramatically. Just enough so you can't read it. Just enough to make sure you stay out. And if you've ever asked yourself, why does this feel strange? It's because it is. Now let me be fair here. This alone does not prove there's another man. Sometimes a woman pulls back because she's overwhelmed. Sometimes she's frustrated. Sometimes the relationship is already cracking. And distance shows up before honesty does. But that still doesn't make the pattern harmless. Because when communication becomes selective, something is changing in the emotional structure of the relationship. This isn't automatically betrayal, but it is controlled visibility. There's a difference. A woman who values you doesn't feel the need to edit reality in front of you on a regular basis. She doesn't need to constantly curate what you can and cannot see in real time. But when she starts separating her communication from your presence, she's doing something very specific. She's creating 2 versions of her life, one that you're allowed to experience and one that you're not. And here's the truth most men don't want to face. People compartmentalize when they have something to protect, or when they no longer feel safe being fully transparent. Either way, you need to pay attention, because if everything in her world was aligned with you, there would be far less need to hide ordinary interactions. Far less need to leave the room just to say something simple. Far less need to act like your presence changes what she can or cannot do. When a woman feels open and honest with you, your presence doesn't force her to adjust. It matches her. But when her behavior changes the moment you're around, that's not nothing. That's adjustment. That's calculation. Or at the very least, emotional withdrawal. And the more consistent it becomes, the less you're dealing with a one-time mood, and the more you're dealing with a pattern. You might be telling yourself, maybe she just wants privacy. Maybe. But ask the better question. Why does that privacy suddenly feel more intense when you're close enough to notice? That doesn't automatically mean cheating, but it does mean you're being kept at a distance. And the moment you start getting excluded from the ordinary parts of her daily interactions, you need to stop calling it nothing. Because whether it's another man, emotional detachment, or a relationship that's quietly falling apart, the pattern is still real. And if you think that's uncomfortable, the next sign is even more revealing. The second sign is even harder to ignore once you see it. Her phone is no longer just a device. It becomes a boundary. Watch how she treats it. She takes it everywhere. Not casually, but deliberately. Bathroom, kitchen, even when there's no reason to carry it. It's always within reach, always within control. And the moment you get close to it, something shifts. She becomes alert, slightly tense. Maybe not enough for you to call it out, but enough for you to feel it. You ask something simple like, "Hey, can I use your phone real quick?" And suddenly there's hesitation. Excuses, deflection. Not anger, not panic, just resistance. And that resistance tells you something important. Because understand this clearly. It's not always about the phone. It's about what the phone represents. Access, exposure, vulnerability. Now let me be precise here. Healthy adults are allowed to have boundaries. A woman is allowed to protect her phone. She is allowed to have private messages, private thoughts, private conversations. Privacy by itself is not guilt. But when that privacy becomes extreme, reactive, and suddenly far more guarded than before, you should stop looking at the phone and start looking at the pattern. Because people don't just guard objects. They guard information. They guard access. They guard parts of themselves they don't want examined too closely. And when someone protects something this intensely, it usually means one of two things. There's something there that could damage trust. Or the relationship is no longer healthy enough for openness. Either way, the signal matters. She's not protecting her phone. She may be protecting a version of herself you're not supposed to see. Let that sink in. Because a woman who is aligned with you doesn't usually build walls around every ordinary interaction. She doesn't feel threatened by your basic proximity to her digital life. But when she starts acting like her phone is a locked vault, you're no longer dealing with a small quirk. You're dealing with risk management. She's calculating who can see what, when they can see it, and what happens if those worlds overlap. That's why the phone never leaves her side. That's why she reacts even when you don't intend anything. Because to her, access equals exposure, and exposure equals consequences. Now here's where most men make the mistake. They focus on proving something. They try to catch her. They look for evidence. They start monitoring, questioning, pushing. And all that does is make the situation uglier. You don't need to invade privacy to recognize a shift in trust. Because when someone is consistently guarding something in a new and extreme way, it's not because nothing changed. It's because something did. And the more she protects that space, the more carefully you should listen to everything else she says. Because the next sign isn't about what she hides. It's about what she tells you, and how it slowly stops making sense. The third sign is where things start to unravel. Not in a dramatic way. Quietly, repeatedly, in ways that are easy to dismiss, until you look back and realize nothing lines up anymore. She starts telling small lies, not the kind that shock you, the kind that slip through unnoticed at first. She says she's staying in, but later you find out she was out. She tells you she's going somewhere specific, and days later, the details don't quite match. You bring something up, and suddenly the story shifts just enough to make you question your own memory. And this is where it gets dangerous. Because small lies don't always feel like betrayal. Sometimes they feel like confusion. And confusion keeps you stuck. You start wondering if you misunderstood, if you heard wrong, if maybe it's not that serious. But here's what you need to understand. Lies don't stay small. They stack. One lie creates pressure, and that pressure demands another lie to support it, and then another, and another, until the person telling them is no longer managing the truth. They're managing a system. A system of versions. One version for you, one version for her friends, sometimes one version for another man. And the moment someone is living inside multiple versions of reality, consistency becomes impossible. That's why her stories start breaking down. That's why timelines don't align. That's why she forgets what she told you. Not because she's careless, but because she's overloaded. An honest person doesn't need a good memory. A dishonest one depends on it. Think about that carefully. Because every time she has to remember what she told you versus what she told somebody else, she's not being present with you. She's performing. And performance always cracks under pressure. Now again, be mature about this. One inconsistent story does not equal infidelity. People forget details. People get tired. People speak carelessly. But repeated inconsistency is different. Repeated inconsistency means you are no longer dealing with a stable truth. You're dealing with a moving narrative. You might notice it in her tone. A slight hesitation before answering. A quick correction. A vague explanation where there used to be clarity. And the more you pay attention, the more you start to feel like you're talking to a different person every time. Not because she changed overnight, but because you're no longer seeing the real version consistently. You're seeing fragments. And here's the part most men avoid. You don't need to catch a big lie to know something is wrong. If the small details don't hold, the big picture is already unstable. Because truth is stable. It doesn't need adjustment. It doesn't need editing. But when someone keeps adjusting their story around you, it means the full truth is no longer being shared with you. That may mean another man. It may mean emotional distance. It may mean she's halfway out of the relationship already. But whatever the cause, the message is the same. Something is off. And once her words lose consistency, the next thing she'll control is your access. The fourth sign is this. You're not allowed into her space. And I don't just mean physically walking into her home. I mean access to the environment where her real life happens. Now let's add the context that matters. If you're in the early dating stage, this sign means less. A woman has every right to protect her space early on. That can be wisdom. That can be safety. That can be normal boundaries. So don't be childish about this. But if this is a relationship with time, consistency, and emotional intimacy behind it, and you're still being kept completely outside her real world, then you need to pay attention. At first, it sounds reasonable. She's busy. Her place is messy. The timing isn't right. There's always a small, harmless excuse that feels just believable enough for you to accept. So you don't push. You respect it. You tell yourself you're being patient, understanding, mature. But weeks go by, maybe longer, and somehow, nothing changes. You realize something uncomfortable. She knows where you live. She's been in your space. She's seen your environment, your habits, your reality. But you're still standing outside hers. And that imbalance is not accidental. Because a woman who is building something real with you over time doesn't keep you permanently at the edge of her world. She lets you in. Not perfectly, not all at once, but gradually, naturally, without resistance. So when that access is consistently blocked in a serious relationship, you need to stop asking, why is she busy? And start asking a different question. What is she protecting? Because space is where truth lives. It's where routines exist. It's where patterns become visible. It's where you stop relying on what she tells you and start seeing who she actually is. And if she controls your access to that space, she controls your perception of her. If you're not allowed in her space after real time and real commitment, you're not fully in her life. Let that sit for a moment. Because most men confuse presence with access. Just because you spend time together doesn't mean you're integrated into her reality. You might only be experiencing a version of her that's been carefully selected for you. Clean, controlled, limited. And here's the deeper layer most men miss. She's not always afraid of you showing up because it's inconvenient. Sometimes she's afraid of unpredictability, because unpredictability removes her ability to manage outcomes. If you show up at the wrong time, you might see something she can't explain away. And that's a risk she may not want to take. So instead, she conditions you. She makes it normal for you to stay in your lane, to wait for invitations, to accept boundaries that only seem to move in one direction. And over time, you adapt. You stop asking. You stop pushing. You stop expecting access. And that's when you've already lost clarity in the dynamic. Because now, she decides what you get to see and what you don't. But it doesn't stop there. Because even in the one place where everything is supposed to be visible, she still keeps you out. The fifth sign is this. You don't exist in her public world. And in today's world, that public space is digital. Now listen carefully. This is not about posting you. This is not about showing you off or turning your relationship into content. That's not the point. The point is access, connection, visibility. A woman who is serious about you doesn't always need to advertise you. But she also doesn't usually feel the need to erase your presence from her social environment completely. She doesn't treat your existence like something that must be hidden at all costs. But when she avoids adding you, avoids interacting with you, avoids even the smallest form of digital connection, you need to ask yourself why. Not emotionally, logically. Because social media is where relationships become traceable. It's where patterns can be seen, where interactions leave evidence, where different parts of someone's life can overlap and potentially expose each other. So when she keeps you out of that space, it may not be about privacy alone. It may be about controlling visibility. She's not always hiding you from the world. Sometimes she's hiding the world from you. There's a difference. Because if you were connected, you would see more than just what she tells you. You would see how she interacts with others, who she engages with, what her real social circle looks like, and that's information she may not want you to have. You might hear things like, "I just like to keep my life private." And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. And sometimes it is reasonable. But real privacy doesn't require total exclusion in a committed relationship. It doesn't require you to be completely removed from her digital reality while she remains fully aware of yours. That's not simple privacy anymore. That's selective transparency. And selective transparency is a strategy. It allows someone to maintain multiple narratives without them colliding, because once you're inside that space, the chances of overlap increase. Comments, likes, tags, mutual connections, all it takes is one interaction, one moment, for things to start unraveling. So she keeps you out. Not necessarily because you don't matter, but because your presence could interfere with something else she's maintaining. That may be another man. That may be an image. That may be a version of independence she wants to preserve while still keeping you emotionally invested. But the longer you stay disconnected, the easier it is for her to keep those worlds separate. And here's the part that should concern you the most. It's not just where she keeps you out. It's where she refuses to be seen with you. The sixth sign is this. She controls where you're seen together. At first, it might even feel intentional in a good way. She suggests quieter places, more private settings, less crowded environments. You might tell yourself she just prefers calm over chaos. And to be fair, some people do. But patterns don't lie. Because over time, you start to notice something specific. She consistently avoids places where she could be recognized. No popular spots, no familiar hangouts, no environments where people who know her might show up unexpectedly. Every plan is filtered. Every location is chosen with one thing in mind: minimizing exposure. And that's not just about comfort. That can be about risk. Because public spaces introduce something she can't control. Collision. Running into someone she knows. Someone who knows her. In a context that doesn't match the story she's told them. And if she's juggling more than one narrative, that kind of collision is dangerous. So she eliminates it. Not by telling you the truth, but by quietly steering you away from